Hi guys. So one of the questions that you guys always ask me is where should we invest in the real estate market? Which are the up and coming areas? So I'm really excited about today's video where we're going to talk about real estate trends in Zambia in 2021. You don't want to miss this one, guys. Before we get into all of that good stuff, if we haven't met before, my name is Natasha Chumia. I'm the founder and director of Diaspora Connect. And on this channel, I like to give you information and inspiration on the Zambian real estate market. So if you like the sound of that, then please like this video and subscribe. Hit the notification button because you don't want to miss any of the videos that we have in store for you. Now, in today's video, I am joined by a very special guest. His name is Tim Ware. He is the managing partner of Knight Frank here in Zambia, and we are going to be talking about a number of great topics. We're going to talk about the real estate sector, how it was at the beginning of the year 2021, a bit shaky. We're also going to talk about the new Dawn administration, how it's going to affect the real estate sector in a very positive way, we're all hoping. But most importantly, guys, stay until the end of the video because that is really where the good stuff is. Tim is going to identify areas for you guys to invest in, okay? And he's also going to talk about some other areas within real estate that have huge demand and that are currently being underserved. So if you guys are looking for opportunities in real estate here at home in Zambia, then watch this video until the end. And we have a special download for you. So stay until the end and I'll tell you all about it. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Natasha. Good afternoon.
How are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well.
Good,
Very
good.
well.
Thank you so much for coming.
Pleasure. Thanks for asking me. Really good to be here.
We're happy to have you here.
Thank you.
So let's get straight into it. Now, last year, 2020, was a very difficult year, very challenging. We had the pandemic to deal with. We were technically in a recession, very tight liquidity situation. So coming into 2021, where did the real estate market sit at the beginning of the year?
Thanks, Natasha. Obviously, the beginning of this year, there was a lot of uncertainty. We had COVID and we had the economy. Yeah. And we had uncertainty with the elections coming up in August. So everybody was really waiting to see what was going to happen. But the macroeconomic factors were the first negative part of 2021, sort of leading through from the end of 2020. So we had this situation where the kwacha had depreciated, the inflation was going very, very high. And then the COVID came along. So that meant that in terms of the property market, everybody was very nervous. And property is one of those things you have to have confidence around.
Right.
You want to build, you want to invest, whether it's a house, some land, service plots, or retail or commercial. So all of those things were negatively being affected by COVID, the economy, and then the elections. Yeah. So we sat with a lot of uncertainty in the beginning of 2021.
Okay, and that's totally understandable. We've talked about COVID. How were different parts of the real estate sector affected by COVID? And I say the different parts because, you know, some people think that real estate is one thing. And those of us who are active in the sector know it's many different things and there are many subsectors. So what did you see in terms of the way different subsectors were affected by the pandemic, especially in 2021 as we went through those different waves?
Yeah, and I think also the other thing just to mention before we get into those subsectors is how Zambia's property market has matured and how it has grown. If we go back 20 years, I always look to when Manda Hill Shopping Centre opened in 1999.
Yeah.
And that was sort of, although that was a retail centre, it sort of was the beginning of how people got into property more.
I like the way you've put a pin on an actual moment, a year, 1999.
We were actually, you know, we were a little bit involved in Manda Hill locally and doing some of the lettings, but it was just that, you know, I'd been here in Zambia a few years then, coming from the UK. So I was also adjusting and learning the market here. But the subsectors that we see now, and affected by COVID, you know, coming to your question, obviously office space, everybody was working from home.
Yes.
We were restricted in how we could work and going to the office. All our offices, I'm sure like you and us, we we couldn't go in, so you were working remotely. Retail, shopping centres, everybody was restricted. We didn't have a complete lockdown ever in Zambia compared to, say, Botswana, East Africa, but we continue to function here.
Yeah.
In terms of resi, things obviously slowed down. Yeah, residential. Sorry, a bit of slang there. But in terms of residential, things were definitely slower, but I think it was the sector that was least affected.
Why is that? Why
Because
do you think?
Well, because it's the strongest sector.
Right.
This has the highest demand.
Okay.
It's coming from the growing population in Zambia.
Right.
It's coming from the urbanization. It's coming from everybody wanting to have a home,
yes.
to somewhere to live.
Yes,
And that's always been the drive in Zambia, because we have these high interest rates. So it's driven more by buying a piece of land and developing it out over time. So residential remained, yes, rentals went down a little bit, but that was more the economy before the COVID, I think.
Right.
But we all needed somewhere to stay.
Yes.
More, we needed somewhere to work and live in the same place.
Yeah, right.
So values of land, obviously nothing was really increasing at this time, and the uncertainty pushed values probably down a bit. But overall, I think residential was fairly resilient.
Right.
Definitely compared to offices and retail.
Yeah. That's music to my ears because I only deal in residential. So guys, you heard it for yourselves. Residential was the most resilient. All right. Now, in your last quarterly report, you put out quarterly reports as Knight Frank.
Yes.
One of the things that you mentioned is that you expected to see some recovery in 2021 in the property market. Did you see that?
Not as much as we had thought we were going to see. And I think we were always looking more towards the first quarter of 2022 rather than sort of halfway on the end of 2021. And I think that was because we had a worse COVID. COVID, we never quite know how it was going to be. We had that bad second wave in January.
Yes, you're right.
Then the very bad third wave in July, which we didn't know or predict or anticipate. So we didn't know that. So that did affect the market much more, and the ability for recovery in terms of residential in particular, but all the sectors. I know resi is your favorite.
Yes,
right?
it's my favorite. So I was actually going to steer the conversation back to that. So for our audience who are mostly in the diaspora, we do have some local people that watch and follow. But for our audience in the diaspora, it's much harder for them to know and understand which residential areas do you see as really growing? Because they always say, where should I invest? Where should I put my money? And so what would your response be to a question like that?
I think two sectors. I think majority of people should be looking at the area where there's the biggest demand. So the biggest demand is in the sort of low to medium sector, because that is the fastest growing sector, where the biggest demand is. So your rentals of maybe 5,000 to 15,000 kwacha a month, somewhere in that sort of range. Obviously, you can look at the high end, but the high end has sort of squeezed up.
It's shrunk, hasn't it?
It's shrunk. It's shrunk. And the low to medium is where you're seeing the biggest demand always. It's growing the quickest. Urbanization, let's say around the country, it's about 45%. And by 2030, it'll probably be around 52%, somewhere around there. So if you're looking at buying a piece of land, we've got service plots, which are the dominant area in residential. If you look at, say, $30 a square meter, $15,000 a plot, 250,000 kwacha for a 500 square meter plot, that I think is good value still. And those with serviced roads, electricity, power. And I think these days that serviced plot estate, where more developers have got into and are selling, it's a good investment, because they're under more pressure to provide better services perhaps than 5 or 10 years ago. There's a bit more scrutiny. You can't just offer a 500 square meter plot
and just leave people
in the middle
to
of the bush. Now it's more structured. And I've seen one or two developers saying they'll help you to build a house.
Right.
So they'll offer you and even terms.
Yeah.
So not just cash, but you've got 1 or 2 or 3 years
Yes.
to build these type of
Yes.
houses or to buy a plot or whatever.
Yeah.
And one thing that we've seen in Lusaka and some of the other towns around the country is this improvement in the road network.
Yes.
So I mean, you might have bought a plot in 10 k's out of town,
Yeah.
10 kilometers from here, and there was no road there, tarred road. It was a gravel road. It wasn't very easy, maybe even 15 kilometers away. But now they've been able to tar those roads, improve the access to that road. Suddenly your plot is worth 10, 20% more.
Absolutely.
And the accessibility to get there. And then also we're seeing with this urbanization, these, you have the CBD and then you have a few nodes around the CBD. Now you've got nodes further out and they support the residential with not only supermarkets, little shopping centres, not very large ones, but small neighbourhood centres.
Exactly.
So suddenly all this helps to create value for residential.
Right. Now, you mentioned something that, of course, we've all been aware of, very excited about, which was we had elections. We know the outcome. We now have a new administration. What do you see, or how do you see the new administration affecting the property market, if at all?
Well, I think positively. First of all, from a general perspective, the economy, from all the initial very early signs, it's been 2 months since the election, are very positive. Immediately 2 weeks after the election, we saw the kwacha appreciate by 15%. We've seen investor confidence to support the economy and to support the country coming back. So from the sort of bigger economic side, which ultimately affects property and residential and housing, very, very positive. Even things like the mining sector, it does have a link back because this government has said they want to see that sector grow.
Yes,
it's
and
the
increase
biggest
production.
Increased production. It's the biggest export earner, so that means there's more money coming into the country to do roads and infrastructure. I think more specifically now in terms of the housing market and the property market, I think first of all there's a brand new ministry, which is the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment, I think it's called. And I think it's the first time we've got a ministry like that in the country.
Right.
So that will affect things like green building and developing with the consciousness of looking after the environment better. But more than that, obviously, there'll be a lot of other buildings and other things which will be done around that economy. But for us in housing, maybe we're looking more at solar, for example. We're looking at better use of water. So I think these things will filter through. So that's one area. Then I think the second, in terms of the sort of property market more specifically, will be what we've seen our new president, HH, he even tweeted this morning about land.
I like the way you follow his tweets.
So he was talking about reforming land for the benefit of Zambians, where they can work together with investors and developers. So there's that entrepreneurial side that I think he wants to bring out more, but for the benefit of Zambians, so that they can work in hand in hand. So obviously the government is going to look at the land issue.
And all of that,
I mean, it was looked at over the last couple of years, wasn't it? But I think,
yes, it was.
Maybe more specifically, so that there's a benefit to a Zambian who's going to be able to work with somebody. So I think definitely a lot of positives.
Now, I have hogged the attention to residential, but I know that there are so many other growing areas in real estate because of the economic factors that you've touched on. So could you just say a little about those?
Sure. Yeah, no, thanks, Natasha. Thanks for giving me a couple of minutes on non-residential. So I think the first area would be health. Very uppermost in our minds because of COVID. And we saw the shortages in that sector and the ability that we weren't able to meet some of the demand. So when I talk about health, I'm looking at sometimes, for example, small medical rooms up to a big hospital.
Right.
Now some of your viewers and some of your clients may only want to buy a plot. Others may be thinking, well, something larger, investment into commercial. So, for example, if you look at a small suburban mall, don't just think about it as retail, think about it as mixed use. So you can add in, you've got a bit of retail, you've got a little bit of medical rooms perhaps there, Some education is another sector to look at.
Okay.
Obviously, we've got a huge young population, 40, 50% under the age of 18 or so. So they're all going to colleges. And I think, again, in the suburbs, you can do a small mall and you can mix in some of these things. So definitely look at health, look at education.
Right.
Then we believe agriculture as
Okay.
well. It isn't sort
Could you
of...
say more about that?
Yeah, they're happy to talk about agriculture. You know, when you look at agriculture and farming, you don't think about it as obviously a property investment, but it is, because your land is going to be
Yeah.
increasing in value over 10 years.
Yes.
With the ability of, again, coming back to the urbanization, so the demand for food, simply, and the growth of the population.
Yes.
You know, we're growing at, another 400 and 500,000 every year, roughly. That's our population. No, it's huge.
Yeah.
You know, so you have to look, as always in property, whatever investment, it's medium to long term.
Yes.
You can't just get a quick return. Otherwise, in property, I think retail is fairly, unless it's small scale, it's quite supplied already. Or
Yes.
offices is very oversupplied in our market.
But a certain type of office, don't you think?
The-
Like
the
that
very
A
small,
grade.
yes.
Yeah.
The top end.
Top end.
Yeah, there's some very, very good new buildings. But you've got to be flexible now as well. Not only because of COVID, but people are more, they're moving around. They don't necessarily need a desk that belongs to Natasha
right,
or
yes,
Tim. It's
yes.
now we
Shared
might be sharing
workspace,
shared
yeah.
workspace. So
Yeah.
that's happening a lot more
Yeah.
as well. One other sector is small business units.
Yes.
Very, very small scale.
Yes,
So
yes.
50, 100 square meters,
Yes.
where maybe a Zambian entrepreneur is going to rent it.
Yes.
It's not, maybe there's a bit of sort of showroom space. There's a little bit of a store yard space. And you can create these in like a terrace of 10 or so small little business units. I think that's a sector to look at as well.
Yes, and the reason why I'm happy you brought that up is because we have a market where a lot of office space is built for the big corporates, and you find that a lot of small businesses are renting houses or sharing a house. Maybe 3 or 4 businesses will come together and share a house.
Yeah.
So I think actually what you've identified is a really underserved segment of the market.
Yeah, and I think the way I look at it is formalizing some of the informal in a way.
Yes.
Because we know we have a lot of that informal type development that we're trying to bring to formalize it.
Yes.
So there are business units in a way. I mean, in certain parts of Kalingalinga or certain parts of Lusaka. But if you take it and just formalize it a little bit,
Right.
I mean, it's like another sector, perhaps linked into health and education, is student hostels. It's another sector to look at.
Yes.
Hasn't really developed yet, but if you go to, say, the Apex Medical University on the south side of town, so a lot of people turn their houses or their flats
Yes.
into accommodation for nurses or trainees, and there are 4 or 5 of them living together, paying
Yes.
whatever it is per month. So that's an informal, but it could become a bit more formal.
Right.
But we need to look at what can somebody afford, what do they need in that flat,
Yes.
single flats or whatever it is. So that's also, it's formalizing that informal, and student hostels is something that people might want to look at as well, some of your listeners. Yeah.
Great. Which areas would you point to say you've observed that that's a growing area in residential that people can want to put their money in?
You mean neighbourhoods?
Yeah,
Locations,
neighborhoods. Yeah, locations.
So I think in Lusaka, we've seen the south side of Lusaka grow quite a lot. And when I say the south side, to be more specific, perhaps areas down in Makeni, for example, where there have been new link roads coming off the Kafui Road, off the Blue Ball Road, and that area. And then even, people now live in Kafui,
Yes.
and they drive in.
And they commute.
And they commute.
Yeah.
So, yes, it might take, if you leave at 6 a.m, obviously it's going to be shorter, or 5:30, and it can take you 40 minutes. But, if you're living in Boston or you're living in New York or wherever
Exactly.
it is, there's a big commuting time.
Exactly.
The difference may be that you're driving here
Yeah,
compared
you're
to
not
a car
on
or something,
a-
a train or something. So don't forget about those towns
Yes.
that are a little bit further away.
Right.
Chisamba,
Yeah.
for example. People don't often talk about Chisamba, but it's also grown hugely.
Okay.
The access roads are much better.
Great.
You can come in on the Great North Road, you can come round the back, towards sort of Ingareri side of town. Ingareri itself, I think, is a very, very good area.
Okay.
There's a new link road from the airport.
Yeah, and that's Lusaka East now
Yeah.
that we're talking about.
Yeah, it is Lusaka East. Yeah, I mean, sort of airport side, and then coming from the airport you come towards, you're moving west, and you can
Okay.
connect to the Great North Road.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's quite a big farming area.
Yes. Yeah.
But a lot of those farms, some of that land has been subdivided, and those are good areas
Yeah.
because the road network is really, really good there.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great.
And it's a nice place to live, and you can now access coming into town because it's sort of only 20 minutes north of Roma.
Oh, okay.
Really, when you think about it, down Zambezi Road, and then you're out that way.
Okay.
So that's a good area to look at.
Okay, you guys, for me, this was such a wonderful conversation. I hope you enjoyed it too. There were so many nuggets that Tim gave us on how the real estate sector has performed and also where the opportunities lie. So it's not only in residential, but there are so many other sectors to explore. And I hope you really understood the factors that are driving those sectors. Because if you understand that, then you can see the reason in what Tim is saying. So as I mentioned, I referred to the report that Knight Frank do every quarter, and we actually have a copy of their latest report. So please click on the link below this video and you'll be able to get a copy of their latest report on Zambia, on the real estate sector in Zambia, straight into your inbox. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I loved it. I enjoyed it. It gave me some ideas, so I hope it gave you tons of ideas. I am so pleased. In fact, Tim, at some point, it was almost as though he was reading my mind. So a lot of the things he said, the opportunities, are things that, I can't wait to get into more detail myself. We have some great opportunities for you. If you want more information on these opportunities in terms of the residential, then go to our website. The link is below this video. So don't forget to hit that like button if you did like this video, subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any more of our wonderful videos on real estate, and share this video with other Zambians in your community who you know are interested in investing back home in property. And as always, connect with us on social media. We love to chat with you there, but otherwise it is bye for now.